I spent the day cutting down trees with a professional logger today. And even though I study tree felling and I've done quite a bit of it, and I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on what you should and should not do, I really learned a lot today. We watched a bunch of fail videos and we were kind of looking through some of the really obvious mistakes that cause these people huge problems. And it's funny because it's something that seems so simple. You cut a notch in the front, and then you cut the back until you get close to the cut on the front, and then the tree falls down. But it is anything but simple, and there are so many ways to do it wrong. And anyone who says they're an expert on tree felling is fooling themselves, because there's no such thing. But we should all be doing the best we can. So today I want to show you some of the most common fails that you see, or the most common things that people say that are just flat out wrong. So let's get to it.
This is a gigantic tree. It's a house crusher. And they're taking out this monstrous wedge, which is a whole nother story. But what I want to focus on with this tree is the type of back cut they make and why it's such a terrible idea. And I'm focusing on that because I've had 100 comments telling me that I should be making angled back cuts. There's this idea that somehow having the back cut be at an angle helps make the tree go the other way. And it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you don't really think about it or no one explains it to you, it might make sense. But if you can see that angled back cut right now, and then think about the leverage it puts on, as you're trying to wedge into that, if the tree is trying to lean back against your wedge and that wedge is fighting and it's trying to push with a little bit of leverage down at the bottom, it's trying to push 40, 50, 60,000 pounds of tree forward, where all that force is really going is down into the hinge. And I've seen 100 videos where this happens. That force is going down into the hinge and it breaks the hinge off. The tree slides down the ramp you just created for it and falls over backward. And I hope everyone was okay, but that house is not okay. The logger that I was working with in that last video really stressed the importance that every step you take away from that tree after you make the cut increases your safety dramatically, because almost all accidents happen within 15 feet of the stump. And if this guy had just kept moving away, he would have had a lot better result. Now we're going to take that same principle and do a compare and contrast between this guy, who probably really knows what he's doing and hustles his tail off to get away from that tree, and this second guy who knows what he's doing, I would assume, but goes ahead and sits right next to the tree so that the limb can fall on his head. I'm glad he was wearing a helmet, but no matter how confident you are, a better plan would be to move away. And no offense to this guy, but I've got no idea what he thought was going to happen here. He gave that tree nowhere to go except straight back towards him. He made his back cut on a downward slope, which was just a ramp for it to slide towards him. And it was hung up at the top when he started. Your back cut should be flat. That's it. That's all there is to it. This one also should have been pretty obvious. I don't know what that guy thought was going to happen, but you don't ever lean your ladder against the limb that you're cutting, because it can move in unpredictable ways. Even if that branch had not bounced and caused his ladder to come off, that limb could have swung right into his ladder. I've personally had a ladder and chainsaw accident myself, and I don't plan to do it again. Speaking of lessons I've learned the hard way, this is me messing up right here. And the mistake here is having a leaning tree and leaving your hinge too thick. If the tree is leaning, it already wants to fall, and your job is to stop it from falling until you are ready. If it falls before the hinge is thin enough, then the hinge will hold and the tree will split vertically, and this is called a barber chair. So the lesson is, if you have a leaning tree, get your hinge thin or punch out the center of the hinge with a bore cut. And if you don't understand what those terms mean, do some research or hire someone else to cut that leaning tree, because a leaning tree is more dangerous than a straight tree. We can't really see anything that happened here, before the tree fell on the house. So I'm not sure what went wrong, but I would say the lesson that we can learn from this is don't drop a tree on your house. And I'm betting that these guys knew or felt like they knew what they were doing, and it still went wrong. Pretty bad wrong. So don't be afraid to hire a professional for a big tree like that next to your house. Now, this is way above my pay grade right here, but this is definitely an example of something else we talked about in the last video with Matt from Boys in the Woods. A solid tree is a lot safer to cut than one that is half rotten or has lost its structural integrity. Once they start to rot, they can just explode on you, and you never know what's going to happen. Now, this issue right here goes to another point that me and Matt talked about. If you haven't seen it, you might go back and watch my video with Matt from Boys in the Woods. He's a true pro, and he took a lot of time to explain some stuff and walk me through questions that I had. But if you look at this tree up in the air, and it's already barber chaired on the guy, so he made a mistake to get to the point where this video started. And it happens. I showed you it happened to me. But once that's happened, all that weight's held up in the air, and the end of the tree is pinned in some way where it can't come on down. So this is where you've got to stop and step away from it. When it falls, don't just walk straight up and cut it. Give it some thought to where's the tension, where's the compression, where does this thing want to go? And if you can't answer those questions, then you're not the guy to finish cutting it. Probably should have dealt with the end of the tree before dealing with that part, or got a piece of equipment in there if you're not sure how to deal with it. Here is another mistake that I see all the time, and that is underestimating the weight and the force that tree has, and thinking that you can somehow counteract the force of the tree. Now, I don't know what the plan here was, but that guy was not going to do anything pulling on that rope. I can tell you that right now. And where that's more applicable to most of us, because I don't see a lot of guys holding ropes trying to pull trees, but a lot of people think that their truck or their tractor or their skid steer can push over a tree. And you just have to keep in mind not just how heavy that tree is, but how far ahead of you, above you it goes. And if you've got a 10,000-pound trunk even, and some of these are a lot bigger than that, but even at 10,000 pounds, that thing can take your tractor and throw it like a rag doll, or it can fall back on the tractor. Exactly like the guy who had the angled back cut, and he thought that back cut was going to control the tree and make it fall his way. Your tractor can't do that either. So just be careful out there, guys. And if you're not sure, don't be afraid to get a pro. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.